It's just one burned down home after another. Each passing property reinforces the message that its most recent residents are now coping with great loss. Each evacuee is facing the gut punch of a radically changed life with new fears and uncertainties. Their past problems likely seem insignificant as they face new problems concerning shelter, living arrangements, finances, insurance settlements, whether they will ever have the ability to live in their own house, or even to continue life together in the same family unit. In just a brief moment of time, this catastrophe has written a seemingly infinite number of sorrowful stories. Driving around the unharmed neighborhoods adjacent to Altadena, it's easy to see how the town's mature and forested landscapes teamed up with high winds to create a fire that grew beyond what anyone might have thought possible. This was once my retirement home, located in the mountains above Tehachapi, California. It had my ideal mix of broad vistas, oak and pine trees. Deer would come right up to my door. Even when my emotions went out and I bought it, I knew the property had the potential to be in the path of a wildfire. My everyday reminder was this tall tree located so close to the house that a portion of the roof had been cut out to accommodate its growth. In 2018, a catastrophic fire destroyed much of Paradise, California and its surroundings. Known as the Camp Fire, its severity raised the concerns of nearly all of us living in the mountains. This yellow ribbon marks a site where a burned body had been found. A reminder that a sudden wildfire could claim anyone as a fatality framed by yellow tape. A spur-of-the-moment evacuation from my home would require getting to the valley's only exit using just a 2-lane road, a drive that would normally take about 20 minutes and would surely be jammed to a near standstill in an emergency evacuation. Perhaps I'd be found in my car electrocuted by a downed power line. Soon after the Paradise Fire, home insurance companies began canceling policies which would cause banks to avoid placing loans on mountain properties and would cause property values to fall. I decided to cancel my insurance company before it canceled me. So I sold the home, drove down the mountain, and began living a new dream of building on a lot located on the outskirts of Los Angeles, a place that still had mountain views and a country flavor, but could be made much safer from fire. The roof framing came in the form of roof trusses, which had extremely long rafter tails, and those are the pieces of wood you see extending out from the sides of the building. The longer the rafter tails, the longer the roof eave, which gives you more exposure to fire that might be coming up the side of the building. So we cut the rafter tails way back and minimized our exposure there. There are only 2 places on the exterior of the house where wood is exposed. One is the front door. The other is the fascia board system that runs around the perimeter of the roof and is shown here with the red arrow. On the upper left side of this photo, you can see that we plastered in the roof eave for fire resistance. Building code required the installation of an extensive fire sprinkler system. I thought we'd have a bunch of unattractive fire sprinkler heads hanging down from the ceiling, but in fact the sprinkler heads are recessed and capped off, so they're very unobtrusive. The system that activates the fire sprinklers also activates fire bells on the outside of each building. Altadena was mostly built between the 1920s and the mid-1960s. People buying here were attracted by the mature landscape that featured large trees and lush natural foliage. A fire of the magnitude of the Eaton fire, a single event that has just burned over 9,000 structures, was certainly inconceivable to these residents. Driving through the neighborhood, it appears that proper landscape thinning and other fire prevention measures seem to have been largely ignored. In Altadena, as well as at my home, the Los Angeles County Fire Department has jurisdiction and has set strict landscape requirements for new construction. Much of this involves attending to what the fire department calls defensible space. These rules primarily pertain to new construction, but are of course just as appropriate for older homes. The requirements include landscape planning zones based on distance from structures. In Zone A, which consists of the first 30 feet from a structure, plants are limited to those being small and fire resistant. Larger plants are allowed in Zone B, which consists of the area 30 to 100 feet from the structure. The fire department's website includes an extensive 7-page list of permitted plants for the A and B zone. Also of interest is the short list of more flammable plants which are discouraged. This includes California sage, which is one of the most common native bushes in Southern California. In addition to containing flammable oils, this plant grows over its own dead branches, creating a lot of dry brush at ground level. The lower portion of my lot had never been cleared, ever, and had a grove of California sage located next to the road, ready to explode from something as simple as a tossed-out cigarette. I trimmed these bushes way back and cleaned additional brush from the lower part of the hillside. On 3 of the house's 4 sides, I planted the yard with widely spaced low shrubs. The property's biggest fire danger is on the 4th side of my house, and that's my neighbor's heavy landscaping. We're walking in a northeasterly direction. Here's the shop building off to the right, coming up on the house. And this is the direction that the wind ordinarily blows. Rarely does it come across here from this neighbor's landscape over to the house. My property line is sort of at the ridge right over here, which is where the neighbor owns all the landscape over here. And we've got the fire bell up here, got a fire hose here, and the narrowest point on this side of the house is at the air conditioner, where it's the corner of the house over here to this side where there's a big pepper tree. It's about 21 feet from the corner of the house over to this little ridge here. As you can see, I sort of keep this pepper tree trimmed down in order to minimize fire danger. Another fire hose, and more landscape on this side that I keep trimmed. And here we are. So that's pretty much the extent of the problematic landscaping here as far as wildfire goes. The Los Angeles Times photo coverage of the Eaton and Palisades fires showed residents fighting flames with low-pressure garden hoses and even having to use buckets to carry water. The 2 fire hoses on the north side of my house, both of which have water pressure and volume well beyond that delivered to the inside of the house, weren't required by code, but I put them in as an added safety measure. When building the house, I had the plumber run a dedicated water line to 2 outside spigots, which would be dedicated to the fire hoses. While the flow of domestic water inside the house is reduced by a pressure limiter, the fire hose water line branches off before it hits the limiter, providing full street pressure. This is an easy installation with a new house. When watching a news report on a wildfire, you see the reporters wearing fire goggles and dust masks. Remember the tape on the ground we saw earlier, the one that previously outlined a corpse? It's easy to imagine that the person who died there had collapsed upon trying to get to their car, but was quickly overcome with wind-driven smoke and ash, making breathing and seeing impossible. I keep masks and fire goggles close at hand. Be aware that a wildfire can spread extremely fast. The very first day I started editing this video, the sight of smoke came over the hill behind my house. I hiked up to the top of the hill to see what was going on and found this fire, which had started less than 6 hours before. That morning, people in the area had left their homes to go to work and would soon return home to this. Finally, here's how to get to the Los Angeles County Fire Department website. It is the best thing I've found for help on reducing a home's wildfire risk. So check it out and be careful and stay safe.